So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get an understanding as to what we have to do for the remainder of this program in SBA and how we will complete it. So chapter 9.2, we already went through that. That's basically a lot of terms and definitions and basically parts of your programming, basically understanding you need to have. What is a loop? What is a statement? What is a variable? And so on. Now for your SBA, your actual SBA, I already gave you guys this document here. And I told you guys that your SBA is basically going to have 4 parts. And the first part at number 1 is going to be your IPO chart and your algorithm. The second part is your trace table. The fourth part is your program. And sorry, the third part is your program. And the fourth part is your problem statement. Are you guys following so far?
Yes, sir.
Great. So I already gave you guys the IPO chart. So you would have started that. What was the IPO chart? We learned in chapter 9.3 what is the IPO chart. The IPO chart is basically a 3-column table. And all you're doing is reading through this document here, your SBA document. You're going to go to the program part. This is the program part. Here. This is all there is for the programming. So you read this paragraph here, you read all of the information here, and you gather what is your input, what is your processing, and what is your output. So I'm sure I already checked IPO charts for quite a few of you. Some of you are heading in the right direction. Now, please ensure that for your input, you're going to have at least 3 to 4 inputs based on the requirements. 3 to 4 input based on this requirement here. The instructions here. 3 to 4 input. I already went through it, and you're supposed to be having almost 3 to 4 inputs. When it comes to the processing, it's going to be 2 processing also. And when it comes to the output, it's going to be also 3 to 4 outputs. So the correct processing is going to be 2, at least 2. If you have more, that's not a problem. But what's going to match your requirements inside of this SBA requirements is going to be at least 2 that you must have. Are you guys clear on the IPO chart?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that's the IPO chart there. Now, after you finish your IPO chart, why are we developing the IPO chart? You're developing it to know what is your input, what is your processing, and what is your output. That is why you're developing it. What is input, what is processing, and what is output. And where are we going to use it? When you're developing your pseudocode. So we have the example on your right-hand side here. The IPO chart is on the left. The pseudocode is on the right. So that same input, processing, and output, you basically use that in your pseudocode. So I gave you guys in this file here the basic structure that your pseudocode is going to have. So you're going to start off with a title for your pseudocode. So if you notice at the very top here, we have a title. In this example, this one's title is pseudocode underscore 5A. Add 3 numbers together. That's their title. Next, we have declare variables and initialize variables. Now, this here is important. What do we mean by declaring a variable? Declaring a variable basically means to tell the program that you are going to use a variable. Declaring a variable basically means that you're going to tell the program you are going to use a variable. And you're also going to tell it what is the data type of that variable. So we learned about this in chapter 9.2. What are the different data types? We have data types such as integer, real, character, string, and boolean. So basically, can anyone remember what is a variable?
Something that represents a word, number, or a string of words.
Okay, you can say it that way. You can say it that way. It represents a number, a string, but more accurately, I'm looking for something specific, a specific way of describing the variable. What is it basically doing? What does your variable do?
Isn't it like a placeholder for value?
Exactly, that is it. Your variable is like a placeholder. It is a storage. It is a storage area. Look, it's right here. It's like a storage area that is going to store some sort of value. Now, it could be text and it could be a value. So, text being words, letters, symbols, whatever the case may be, and values being numbers. So, that is a variable. It's going to store your input, which is either text or number. Now, look at this example here. You are adding three numbers. Example 5. You're adding three numbers. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. And you're going to input those three numbers. But the question is, where are you going to store those three numbers? You are going to store them into three variables. So the first number is going to be stored in a variable called number 1. The second input is going to be stored in a variable called number 2, and the third variable is going to be stored, the third input is going to be stored in a variable called number 3. Are you guys following so far?
Yes, sir.
Great. So remember, when you input information into a program, where are you going to store it? In a variable. Each variable is going to have a name. Now, the question is, how will the program know that you're using a variable? How will it know what type of data is going to go into this variable here? That's the question now. That is declaring your variable. That is the second step here. Declaring your variable. So that's what I'm going to show you guys now. How do you declare your variable? So let me open another Word document. So I told you guys that you're going to start off with the title. So title is going to be, we're going to give a title, add three numbers. So we're using that same title, add three numbers. Now the second stage, now this is actually how you can actually write a pseudocode. So as I'm going through, you guys can follow along too. So you add your title. Now what's the second step? To declare your variable. How do you declare your variable? Well, what you can do is add a title variable, and maybe in bracket you can say declare, so that you know it means declaring the variable. Or maybe you can even put the title declaring underscore variable, so that you know to yourself that under this here is where you are declaring your variables. So how do we declare the variables now? You declare the variables. Let me look at, give me a second, let me confirm that I'm going to declare it correctly. Let's see an example. I want to ensure I give you guys the correct. I know it's supposed to be number, the variable, and then the data type, but I just want to verify the correct structure. Score as the sample Robert. What am I looking for? I'm looking for pseudocode. Right, so this here is an example here. Student underscore first name equals string, and then we put a semicolon. So we're gonna use that as our example. So we're gonna say number one equal, and what is our data type? Remember, reference your table, this table here. We have integer, we have real, we have character, we have string, we have boolean. So which one we're gonna use? We don't really want any decimals, so we're not gonna use real, so we're gonna use integer. So what we're gonna say is number one equals integer, semicolon. Why are we putting a semicolon here? A semicolon basically indicates the end of a statement in a line of code. So we're basically indicating that this is the end of the instructions. So we're going to declare the other variables. Number two is an integer. And number three is an integer. So what we have done so far, we have added our title, add three numbers, and the second step, following our layout here, declaring your variable. Notice I declared three variables here. This is how you do it. The name of the variable goes on the left, and then an equal sign, and then you have the data type. What type of data is going to go into that variable? Are you guys clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Are the rest of you clear on that?
Yes, sir.
If you're not following, please let me know. If while going through you don't understand, please let me know. Now, that is declaring. Remember, once again, declaring means you name the variable. Even right, you have it right here. I even have it right here. Declaring basically means to name the variable and to give the data type. Now, we're going to initialize the variable now. Now, what do we mean by initializing the variable? We mean to give the variable a value. Initializing the variable means to give a variable a value. So how do we give a variable a value now? It's very similar to declaring. You're basically going to say the name of the variable. So this case is going to be number one equals, and you put the value after it. So in this case, we can say number one equals 0, semicolon. Number two equals 1, semicolon. Number three equals, sorry, that's supposed to be 0. All I'm supposed to be 0. Semicolon. And that is how you initialize a variable. Note that it doesn't have to be only 0. It could be any value. I could say number one is equal to 300. I could say number 2 is equal to 10,000. It doesn't matter. Initializing a variable means to start the variable with a value instead of it being empty. Are you guys clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Divya, Chitra,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Jonathan, Shania.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Clear as to how you declare and how you initialize? Is it simple or is it complicated? I need to know if you guys are understanding. So, following our list of steps that we have here, I showed you guys how to add your title. I showed you guys how to declare your variable and what declaring your variable means. I showed you guys how to initialize your variable and what initializing means. So the next step in your pseudocode is basically to mention or to write what is the input, what is the processing, and what is the output. So this is where you're going to make use of your IPO chart. Your IPO chart will tell you what is the input, processing, and output, and you simply put that into your pseudocode. So we can think of example 5 as a continuation of our part that we just created. So this is the first part here, the title, declaring and initializing. And then what you're seeing on the screen on the right hand side is where it continues. We have our input here. This here is our input. So that part is our input. So we're going to tell them. So we are going to tell them to input 3 numbers. So we're going to input 3 numbers. Number 1, number 10, another 10, and another 10. That's 3 numbers there. Now what is our processing? Remember, processing is just calculation. You don't need to say that you're inputting 3 numbers and then add it together. You're just saying what you are calculating. That is all. So under processing now, in your pseudocode, you indicate what is the calculation. Number plus number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3, and that's your calculation there. And what are you going to do? And what are you going to do after you finish calculating, after you finish processing? We have our output. We are going to output the result of adding those 3 numbers together. So let me show you guys a better example. So in this example here, this is a little more as to how we would be writing our pseudocode. Now, once again, we have our title here. Remember, we're following this layout here. This is basically how you're going to create it. You have your title, but notice they don't have any declaring or initializing. So remember, I already showed you how to do that. So you guys can do that for yours. Now, after that, we have input. So we say input max temperature and input minimum temperature. Now, I want you guys to take note of something. In our pseudocode or in our program, we don't just input. We don't just input only. We actually have to tell the person what to input. So what I'm going to do I'm going to create an input section now. So this is also similar to what you guys can do. Create an input heading, and right underneath it, what's going to happen. So also note that you're supposed to be numbering your steps. So we are going to say that step one, and colon, and I'm going to press tab so that the space is out and gives me a neat alignment. So step one, I'm going to say output, but that's my instruction, and in quotation mark, I can say please enter number 1, or I can say please enter the first number, close quotation mark, and semicolon. And step 2 now, yes, so step 2 now, this is where we are going to say input. So we're going to say input, and then we're going to say store it inside of the variable. So we're going to mention the name of the variable now, and that's going to be number 1. So instead of just saying, like you see in this example here, input into the variable max temperature, or even the one that we were using, this one here, instead of just saying input number 1, we need to tell persons what to input. So what we're going to do, we're going to give them some instructions first. Step 1, output. So we're going to give them some instruction on the screen. Output, please enter the first number. And then they are going to know what to input. Step. And the next steps. And the next step, we're going to tell them that. And the next step, we're going to tell them, please enter the second number. So we're going to say input into number 2. And so that's going to be step 5 and step 6. We can say, please enter the third number. And then we can say store that into number 3. So if you notice, we have the input. We're storing it inside of the 3 variables. Input number 1, input number 2, input number 3. But before we input, what are we going to do? We're going to tell them, we're going to give them some instructions that, look, please enter the first number. And you're telling them that when they enter this number now, it's actually going to be stored inside of the variable number 1. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Are all of you following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. So that is how you input. And remember to number your steps also. Number your lines of code, because that's important. Because we're going to need those steps later on when we have to do our trace table, which is the next phase. So we're at input now. We're inputting those values. So we just told them, we just did some inputs. So now we're going to do the processing now. How are we going to carry out this processing? The basic processing is to add the 3 numbers together. So in your pseudocode, so notice the next step is processing there. So in your pseudocode, we actually have to create another variable. We're going to name this one total. because that is where we are going to store the addition of these three numbers. And we're gonna, but we don't necessarily need to initialize all variables, but once again I'm just showing you how you initialize. So I just created another variable called integer. So how do we use this integer to indicate our calculation? Well, the integer, the value, well, first we gotta number the steps, so step number 7. And then we are going to see where are we storing this calculation. So we're going to store it inside of total. So remember, that's the variable I created. So remember, that's the variable I created. And what we're going to do next is indicate what are the other variables that we are going to add together now. So number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3. So this is how we would normally write our processing part, our calculation. The equation is on the right hand side. The equation of adding number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3, that is your equation. Now what are you going to do with the result of this equation now? What are you going to do with it? You're going to store it in another variable. So that is why we created another variable. So we created a variable total to hold this result. So whatever 3 numbers were added is going to be stored inside of this variable here, total. Are you guys clear on how you're going to structure your processing part?
Yes, sir.
Sir, in the initializing part,
Yes.
you have integer equals 0.
Yes.
Is it
Sorry, yeah, that's
is
wrong.
it total?
Yes, that
Yes.
is correct. So that's supposed to be total. Very good. Anything else? Great.
In the process, can you put add the 3 numbers instead of?
You can, but when you do that, you need to indicate where you are going to store the result. So that is why we have it in this structure here. So you can say, so I'm going to give you an alternative step 7. So you can say add number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3, but you also next have to indicate where are you going to store this result. So step 8 might be something like now store result of addition in maybe we can say variable total. But you see, when you're doing this method, you're still gonna have to go back to this method at the top here, because this helps you to simplify it. Did you understand? Kilo? Akila. Akila went away.
Sir should type in the
Well,
chat. Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So that is why, let me take that off so I can skip any notification comes in. So that is why it's much more simpler to indicate it this way here. Because this here might complicate things and might confuse persons. So this method here, I would recommend you using that method. So don't use add num1, num2, and so on. Show whatever the calculation is, because this is the structure that you're going to use. with programming and any part of your pseudocode in terms of processing. Put the equation on the right hand, use an equal sign on the left hand, and put the variable on the complete left to indicate where you are storing that calculation, where you're storing that result. That is um, the layout of your processing, how you're supposed to indicate it. So, yes, so if you notice, they have it here. They say add the three numbers together, but then notice how this output is structured. They made the output a bit lengthy because of that. You have to say output result of number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3. So it caused the output to be a bit lengthy, but it's still clear. We understand what's happening, but we want it to be even clearer. So when we are outputting now, so we're going to create an output heading. So that's going to be step 8 now. And we're going to say, we can just simply say now, output total. And that's it. We don't need to say output the addition of number 1, number 2, and number 3 because it's already stored inside of total. So we can simply say output total. Are you guys clear? So semicolon there, semicolon there. Following? All of you following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, just like how you input and you give some instruction, like this one here, please enter the third number. When you output, I'm sure you guys want to give some instruction also. So this is an alternative step 8. So you can say something like output, and in quotation mark, you can say the total is, put a space, then quotation mark, then quotation mark, and then a comma, and you indicate what is the variable that you're outputting. So what this is doing here, what is happening here is that when you output, this line of text is going to appear on the screen. You can see, you can even put a semicolon here, and that's what's going to appear in the line of text. So it's going to show up, the total is, and then right after that, the value in the variable is going to appear. So it's going to appear something like this here. The total is colon 70. That's how your output will appear, because 70 is right after. So whatever is in there is going to be output. And then you simply write the keyword, the statement end, and this indicates the end of your pseudocode. So we've just written a complete pseudocode from adding your title, declaring your variable, initializing the variable, indicating all of your outputs, carrying out your process, making your output, and then I showed you how to number each one of your steps. So, but basically, this won't be a complete step because that's just an output and an input. They're working together. So that's actually going to be one step because they're working together. So that's going to be, so what you can do, you can further indent it like this here. Indenting helps to you to understand that this here falls under what's at the top here. So it helps to organize your the flow of the information. So that's going to be step 1, step 2, step 3. So this here is going to be step 4, and these are going to be 2 step 5s here, 2 alternative step 5. All right. So, any questions on this pseudocode before we continue? No questions? All right. So you guys should have a basic understanding now as to how you structure your declaration, your initialization, your input, your processing, and your output. So we're going to get more technical now. We are going to look at conditional branching. We are going to be adding more parts to our pseudocode now. Conditional branching. What is conditional branching? Conditional branching, we're reading the paragraph. Conditional branching is used when there is a choice between two options. So we have two types of conditional branching. We have the if-then conditional branching, and we have the if-then-else. So I want you guys to think of it this way. You're walking on the street. So say this is Saints. This is the corner of Saints. This is Brickdam. This is Brickdam. So all of this is Brickdam, and this is King Street. So say you are walking. You are walking, and say you're walking, and say you want to go to Star Computer. You want to go to Star Computer. What direction would you take? Would you turn left? Would you go right? Or would you go straight?
Straight.
Or nobody knows where Star Computer is. Or say you want to go to Coffee. You want to go to Coffee. What direction would you go? Are you guys directionally challenged?
Sir, go that again.
I think this is confusing you guys. So let's not go this direction.
Sir, this direction is wrong.
Somebody saying something and not hearing it clearly.
Sir, you're wrong.
You would
Yeah, your directions are wrong, sir. Isn't it supposed to be the other way around?
How is it the other way around?
Because it's down.
Like I gotta
Copy down and
pull up a map for y'all. I don't know. I don't know where that telling me my direction is wrong. Anyway, forget about that. That seems to confuse you guys more than anything. Just by because y'all. Hi. Anyway, what I'm trying to get at is that when you guys let's see. It's so visually challenging right now. Let me see. Let me try to think of an example I can give you guys. Um, Alright, let me see if this example works. Say when you're going into your room, your bedroom, and the room is dark, what do you do?
Turn on the light.
You turn on the lights. So that there is a conditional branching. That there is an example of a conditional statement in real world. When you enter your room and your room is dark, what are you going to do? So the room is dark, you're going to turn on the lights. Now, if the room is bright, if the room has light inside of it, and you can see inside of your room, or if the light is on, then basically you're not going to turn on the lights. It's either the room is bright or the light is already on. So in a similar situation, in your program, you're going to have situations, you're going to have conditions. And just like how you enter your room and your room is dark, so you can say something like room equal dark. If your room is dark, then you turn on the lights. Now similarly, in your program, you could have conditions like, is a variable equal to a value? Is a variable equal to 10? Or is it less than 10? So that there is a condition, or as I would have explained to you guys, it's also considered a test. So condition or test, whenever you hear condition, think of a test. So your first conditional statement is the if-then statement. How does the if-then statement work? The if-then statement suggests that more than one statement will be considered based on a condition. So we're going to have a condition, and if that condition is true, then we are going to carry out some statements, or we're going to carry out some actions in the program or in the code. So the condition I gave you guys as an example, we could say is a variable, like for example, the same number variable. We could say a total from that same pseudocode that we created. Is total less than 80? So that there is our condition. Or we can say we are asking a question. Is total less than 80? Now, if this condition is true, what are we going to do? We are going to carry out whatever is inside of the body of this if-then statement. If there's any statements after the keyword then, we carry it out. So let me show you guys example. So here's an example. So we're going to break up the pseudocode. So notice at the top you have your title, pseudocode 7, add 3 numbers. Then we have our input. Read number 1, number 2, number 3. And then we have our processing. So notice the example. On the right hand side, add number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3, and then store it inside of total. Now we're heading into the if statement. In the if statement, this is the structure. We're going to say if total is greater than 50. That is our condition. That is our test. We're testing that whatever is in total, we're asking if it is greater than 50. Now, if it is greater than 50, if it is true, please remember this keyword, this word here. If it is true, then we carry out what is under this then statement here. So you look for then, and anything under it, you carry it out. So what is under then? We are printing total. So whatever was in total is going to be printed on the screen. So if 70 was inside of total, it will be printed on the screen. And then we are going to see an end if. What is the purpose of this end if? It is indicating the end of this if statement. So this here, what I outlined here, that is the if statement. From if total is greater than 50 all the way to end if. That is your if statement. And end if is indicating that is the end. Just like how the word end by itself indicates the end of the pseudocode. So I'm going to go it over once again. The first line is your title. The second line is your input. We are going to put in 3 numbers. Store it inside of 3 variables. The third line, we are adding those 3 numbers together, and we are storing it in a variable called total. Now what are we going to do next? We are going to run the if statement. That's what we're indicating here. Run the if statement. We are running a test. If total is greater than 50. Now remember, it is checking to see if it is true. And if it is true, we are going to carry out what is under the then part of the if. So anything that follows then is what will be carried out. So we are printing what is inside of total. Are you guys clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So let me give you guys an example. If after we finish adding the 3 numbers together and total has a value of 60, so we're going to go through the program. Total has a value of 60. So what is going to happen now? The if is going to basically be asking, is 60 greater than 50? Is it greater?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is greater. So that is going to be true. So we go to the then part now. The then part says when it is true, print total. So what is going to appear on the screen now?
Total?
60.
One person said 60, another person said total. Any person wants to break the tie? Anyone else? So it's going to be 60. Why 60? Please remember, when you are outputting a variable, when you are printing a variable, you do not print the name, you are printing what is inside of the variable. You are printing what is inside of it. So that's why the number 60 So that's why the number 60 is going to appear on the screen. So please remember that. That's important to remember. Whenever you see a variable by itself, and what can also help you to know is, remember the one that we created? Look back at this example here. So that is why we have this statement here in quotation marks. This phrase here in quotation mark, because the quotation mark is indicating it is words that we want to appear. It's a string of words that we want to appear. Now, look at this here. So with the example that we have at the top here, that's step 5, what I'm going to do, if you had actually put the quotation mark at the very end here, like this here, and not before the variable, the output is going to be like this here: colon, comma, and the word total. So that is the difference there. Whatever's in the quotation mark, you are indicating that is exactly what you're going to print out. That is exactly what is going to be your output, whatever you put in the quotation mark. And if you want to print a variable, if you want to print what is inside of a variable, you need to separate it. You need to put a comma and separate it from the phrase in the quotation mark. Are we clear, guys? Are we clear on how we print a phrase and how we print a variable?
Yes, sir.
Yes, come on. Are you guys there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, so I just showed you guys the if then. All right, great. So we just said that the output is going to be 60. Now let's try another example. Let's try another example. Say the total is 100. So we're going to be testing, is 100 greater than 50? Is that true or false?
True.
True. 100 is greater than 50. So what is going to be your output?
$100.
100. Good. So it's that simple. And what I'm showing you right now is something that you need to learn, because in your exam, they might give you programs, they might give you pseudocode, and this is how you trace it. This is how you follow through it to know what is happening inside of it. You have to go through it step by step to ensure you get the correct value. Let me try one more time now. Now, what if the total is 40? So we're going to basically be checking, is 40 greater than 50? Is that true or false?
False.
False. So that is going to be false there. Now the question is, what is going to be your output?
Nothing because it said to end it.
Huh?
Nothing because it said to end it.
Exactly, that is very correct. Nothing will happen. Why nothing? Because we are using an if-then statement. This is important to remember. We are using an if-then statement. And the if-then is only looking to see if the condition is true. Please remember this here. If-then is only checking to see if the condition is true. It is not catering if it is false. So if it is false, like in this example here, it's going to ignore this true part here because it's not true. It's false. It's going to ignore that part and it's going to go straight to the end if and end the if statement. And what's after the end if? The end of the pseudocode. So nothing will happen there. Nothing's going to happen as the output. Very good. So let's go on to another example. Okay, there's no more example there. Now this is the basic structure of the if-then statement. Important to remember, How the if then statement is structured. First, we have the if statement and the condition. So as you can see in the example, as you see in this example here, this here is the if statement and the condition is total greater than 5. After that, what are we going to have? We are going to have the then keyword and the true statements. So we're going to have the then keyword and the true statement. So something that can help you to remember is that whenever you see then, it is referring to true. And you're going to learn later on that else refers to false. So when we're looking at the if then else, we're going to see that else refers to false. So then is looking for true statements. And then we have end if. So if the condition is true, we are going to execute the statements. If is a key word. That's important to remember also. If is a key word. Remember we learned that in 9.2? We were learning about statements and keywords. Input, read, output, display. Those are all keywords. If is another keyword. So that might be a question on your paper also. Is if, output, read, all of them, are they keywords? Yes, they are. Now, after you have that condition, that if, we have condition, which is a Boolean expression, and it is basically checking if it is true or false. Because remember, something can only be true or it can be false. So, if it is true, we are going to carry out the true statements, whatever is there. And after you finish carry it out, it's going to reach the end if, which basically ends that if function. Now, if it is false, remember we're not catering if it is false. So we're going to skip the true statements and do not execute them at all. It's basically going to go straight to the end of the program. So let's look at another example, example 8. Example 8 starts with an IPO chart. So we have age as input, we're inputting the age, and we're checking to see, for processing, we're checking if age is less than 13. Now, if it is true for output, we are going to print student is not a teenager. So let's go through the pseudocode. So in the pseudocode, at the very top, once again, we have the title, pseudocode underscore 8, is student a teenager. Then we have our input. We are inputting a value in the variable age. And then we have our if statement, our if keyword. We are checking if age is less than 13. So if somebody entered the age of 8, we are checking if 8 is less than 13. Now, is 8 less than 13? Question to you guys.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that is true. 8 is less than 13. Now remember, when it is true, we carry out the then part of the if. So that is this part here. My arrow pointing way off. So that is this part here. Then. So we are going to output the statement student is not a teenager. So an 8-year-old is basically not a teenager. Let's go through it again. You enter the value of 4. Is 4 less than 13? True or false? No one's going to respond?
Sir, could you please repeat?
Is 4 less than 13? We're inputting the value 4 for age.
Yeah,
Yes,
for
sir.
13.
Yes. So that is true there, right? So another example, then we output student is not a teenager. Now, so we're going to enter another value. We're going to enter 15. Now, is 15 less than 13?
No, sir.
No,
No,
sir.
that's false. So what's going to happen now?
It's not
Happen?
output anything.
The program,
Will not output anything.
it won't output anything. Very good. So remember, it's only checking to see if it's true. So we're going to completely ignore this true part here. And we're going to go straight to the end of the if. And what's after the end of the if? The end of the pseudocode. So nothing will happen when you enter a false value. All right, so I hope you guys understand the structure of your if then. Remember, if then only checks to see if it is true. That's all it's checking for. We have another example here. Let's go through this one here. So once again, we have a title, and this year equal 2019. What is that? This is a question to you guys. What is that? We talked about this earlier. What do we call what we just did there? This year equal 19.
Declaring a variable.
Somebody saying something but not hearing, very low.
No, initializing.
Yes, that is correct. You are initializing your variable. So this year equal 2019, that is an example of initializing your variable. So this year is a variable. It's called this year. And we're giving it a value of 2019. So this is initializing. Then we're going to have input. We're telling somebody to input their birth year. So if somebody now joining, Abdur. So if somebody inputs their birth year of, let's say, 2000. I'm going to give you a simple example. They input their birth year of 2000. Am I breaking up? Are you guys hearing me clearly?
We can hear you clearly, sir.
Okay, good. Because my computer looked like it was freezing up. So I was wondering if it was breaking up. Good. So the person entered the birth year of 2000. So we're going to go through the program. So notice we have a process here. Where is my computer? Why is it overheating? So we have a process here. So this year, remember we do the right hand first. This year, 2019 minus 2000, which is birth year. So 2019 minus 2000 is going to be what?
19.
19. So 19 is going to be stored in the variable age. That's what's happening there. Now, the next part of the pseudocode, if age is less than 13, the question now is 19 less than 13? True or false?
False.
False. Good. So that is false there. So now, what is going to happen next? What will happen next, seeing that it is false?
It wouldn't output anything.
It will not output anything. Very good. That is what will happen next. Because remember, once again, it does not cater if it is false. It is only looking for if it is true. So it's going to ignore that true statement and go to the end. It's going to go to the end if, and then it's going to end the program completely. Let's go through it with another example now. So I'm going to use a smaller value. So we're going to input a birth year of 2010. That's when the person is born. And this year is 2019. 2019 minus 2010.
9.
9. So is 9 less than 13?
Yeah, true.
True. So what's going to happen next? We carry out the true statement. This is the true statement here. Remember, anything with then is a true statement. So then output, student is not a teenager. So a 9-year-old is not a teenager. We have another example here. We have a lot of examples of if then. We have another example here. So once again, we have a title at the top here. We have an input. We are putting a value in the variable called mark. So say for example, we enter the value of 90. We're testing if mark is greater than or equal to 80. Is 90 greater than or equal to 80?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So that is going to be true. Now, if that is true, that means we have to carry out the true part of the statement. That means we have to carry out the true part of the statement. So what is the true part? We are going to output the word excellent. Now notice, that is not the only true part. We have two true parts. We are going to output, please see your teacher. So notice, it's whatever is under the then part. That is the true statement. So output excellent and output please see your teacher, both of them are on the then. So both of them are going to be output if it is true. Now, I think, let me see if they did it. Yes. We have a more better structure of the of this if then statement. See, you notice how indentation is important? Indentation can help us to clearly see that these two statements here fall under the then, that both of them are true statements. So once again, if we go through it, if we enter a mark and the mark is 80, is 80 greater than or equal to 80?
Sir, please you could repeat the question.
Is 80 greater than or equal to 80?
Equal.
So that is going to be true. So remember, whatever is on the then is what will be your true output. So we're going to see on the screen, output, excellent results, and the other phrase, output, please see your teacher. Now, if it was false, say for instance, we entered 70. Now 70 is not greater than 80 or equal to it. So that's going to be false. So what's going to happen is going to ignore the true part and go straight to the end of the statement. of the pseudocode. All right, so are you guys clear on how the if then statement works?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Yes, sir.
so we're gonna move on to the if then else, and that's gonna be the last one we look at. If then else, because we're gonna leave loops to next week. So remember I said the then is looking at the true. So what is looking at the false? The else. The else part is looking at the false. So then is looking at true. Please remember this. And else is looking at false. So how is that structured now? Notice here the structure. This it's basically like the if then. We have an if and a condition. If it is greater than, if it is equal to, and if it is true, we carry out the then part. But if it is false, we carry out the else part. That's how the if then else works. So we're now catering for the else part, the false part. So we have an IPO chart here. We have the IPO chart here, and we're going to input three numbers. We're inputting three numbers into the variables number 1, number 2, and number 3. And what is our processing? We are adding those three numbers together. Notice it's two process here. Two process. We are adding the three numbers together, and we are storing it into total. So that's the first process here you see at the top here. The second process is that we're checking to see if total is greater than 50. So after we finish adding those three numbers together, we're checking to see if it is greater than 50. Now, what is our output? We have two output here. So if the output is true, if the processing is true, the if, then we output the total. But if it is false, we output that the sum is less than 50. So let's look at the pseudocode now. So if you notice a small pseudocode. So at the top here we have a title. And next we have our input. We are reading or we are inputting three values. We are storing it into number 1, number 2, and number 3. What are we doing next? We're going to process. We're going to process by adding the three numbers together. How are we doing that? We are adding number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3, and we are storing that into the variable total. Now, when we add those three numbers together, say for example, our total is 60. We are going to run the if now. Is total greater than, is 60 greater than 50? True or false?
True.
True. So 60 is greater than 50. What are we going to do now? What comes next?
Printing the total, which is 60.
Printing the total, which is 60. Very good. So 60 is going to appear on the screen. And we are going to ignore that line there because that is only being carried out if it is false. So only the true part is going to be carried out. So let's look at the other way now. We are going to enter 40. Is 40 greater than 50?
No.
No, that is false. So when it is false, what are we going to do?
look at the else part and print the sum is less than 50.
Very good. So we print that else part there. So we're going to ignore the true part and we are going to print the sum is less than 50. So the question now is, so I'm sure you guys, I'm hoping that you guys understand these if functions. We run a test. This is an example of a test. And if it is true, we go in one direction. And if it is false, we go in another direction. So that's why I actually was bringing up this here. Because it's like real life examples that we go through daily. Like, if we want to go to coffee. So say we want to go to coffee. What is going to be the result? We go straight. So that's the path that we're going to take. Now, if we want to go to the cathedral, what are we going to do? We are going to turn left. So this is basically what is happening in your if statements, your conditional statements. You're going to have different branches that you can take in your program. And you're going to take those different branches or different paths based on a condition. So if it is true, you might go straight. And if it is false, you might go to the right, to the left. Or even you might go to the right. Or you might go diagonal. You might go anywhere you want. Or you might even turn back. So that is the purpose of conditional statements. That when you want to run different parts of your program, when you want to do something based on a condition, you use a conditional statement. Are you guys clear on that?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we have another example here. Once again, we have a title and we have two inputs. We are inputting this year. So this year is going to be 2022. And we are inputting your birth year. Say you were born in the year 2000. Now we're going to carry out a calculation, a processing. Is this year minus birth year, so that's going to be 22. Is 22 less than 13, yes or no? True or false?
False.
False. So, if it is false, what is going to be your output?
Millie is not a teenager.
Very good. That is it. Millie is not a teenager. So, we are going to ignore this true part and carry out the false part because the condition was false. Now, what if the age was 11? Is 11 less than 13? True or false?
True.
True. So which statement is going to be carried out?
The then statement. Millie is a teenager.
Very good. The then statement is going to be carried out and we're going to ignore this false part here. And then we go to the end of the program. So let's see if we have another example or that's it. This is just explain it. So this is the general layout. We have the if with the condition, and if the condition is true, we carry out the then part, and if it is false, we carry out the else part of the statement. So notice it's here, it's mentioned here. If the condition is true, execute this true statement, but do not execute the false. Or basically, Ignore the false. Ignore the false. Now, if the condition is false, we carry out the false statement and we ignore the true statement. That's what I've been telling you guys so far. So we leave that as a refresher. Now, another thing I want you guys to understand before we close off is what is a sequential statement. It's a very simple, um, very simple um, analogy, very simple process. What do we mean by sequential? When you hear the word sequential, what comes to mind?
Sequence.
A sequence. So something that goes in order, right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You go in that specific order, correct? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Good. So when we say that our statements are sequential, what do we mean? Well, firstly, you guys, I'm hoping that you guys already know what is a statement because we've been talking about that a lot. A statement is these instructions here. You see here. These instructions. So when we say that um, you're using sequential statements or your statements are in a sequence, what we basically mean is that just like how you would read top to bottom, your program reads top to bottom. So this line here is going to be read first, then this line, and then this line here. That is what we mean by sequential statements. The top line gets read first, and then we go through in a sequence, one after each other. So in this example here, what is our sequence? This is line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. We go in that sequence. That is what we mean by sequential statements. We go in an order, a logical order, top to bottom. So any program, any pseudocode, that is how we carry out the instructions, top to bottom. So that is why when we're creating it, we put the declaring first, the initializing first, the input first, because you have to declare before you initialize. If you think about it, you have to declare before you initialize. You have to initialize or declare before you can input. You have to create the variable before you can input into the variable. You have to process before you can get an output. You have to calculate before you can get an output. So everything is in a sequence. That is what we call sequential statements. All right, so in review, what have we looked at for today? Please remember, I gave you guys a basic layout of your pseudocode. I'm going to send this file in the WhatsApp group so you guys can have it, to have a look at it also. Remember, this is the layout. So once again, from your IPO chart, this is where we are at right now, this stage here. IPO chart, and you guys supposed to be moving on to create your pseudocode. So I showed you guys today how to create your pseudocode. I showed you how to add your title, how to declare your variable, how to initialize, how to indicate your input, how to put in your processing, and how to put in your output. And then we looked at what are conditional branching. Conditional branching is when you are going to meet a condition and you want to take different paths. Just like how we have this road here, you want to take different paths. You're going to take a different path based on the condition. If it is true, maybe you're going to go to the left. If it is false, maybe you're going to go to the right. So the two conditional statements, are the if then, and please remember the then only looks for true. So this one, if then, does not cater for the false. And if then else is when we are catering for both true and false. Next week, we're going to look at what is a nested condition, and we're going to finish off on all the loops, because we got to finish off on that. So next week, we're going to look at all of these loops here. All right. Any questions before we end?
Not right now, sir.
No questions? All right, please start your pseudocode. Yes, Akila?
I have a question. If we start the pseudocode, do we have to add in loops?
Yes, you have to put in a loop. That's one of your mark scheme requirement. Please follow the SBA requirement. Please remember to follow this file here with the requirement, and please also use your mark scheme. If you notice in your mark scheme, it says that in your pseudocode, let's give it a second to load. Oh man. Yeah, man. Yeah, in your pseudocode, notice that you need to indicate the start of the algorithm. You need to identify variables. You need to initialize variables. So identifying the variable means declaring. I showed you guys all of this here. Your title is indicating the start of the algorithm. I showed you how to request for data. So this prompt, requesting for data, is actually this output that you see on the screen, and you input into a variable. That is prompting, telling the person what to put. I showed you how to store data. Storing the data is when you say input and you put the variable after it. Notice here, selection and looping. So selection is going to be if, and looping is going to be the loops that we're going to learn about next week. Any other questions? If no questions, please start your pseudocode. What you can do, send me on WhatsApp your IPO chart. Let me confirm it first, and then you can go ahead with your pseudocode. Because remember, that has to be correct first. Then you can go ahead with pseudocode and start working with that. All right, so if you guys don't have any questions, we are going to end here for tonight. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Bye, sir.
Goodbye.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.